Good evening. Welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the south. They promised a normal service, but did Southern Rail deliver on the day? Commuters tell it like it really is.
A report into the Shoreham airshow crash approves changes to the way air displays are run in the future.
Reaching new heights, the daredevil sport that's going from strength to strength.
And from a new sport to an old favourite, the steam train project that's gathering pace. Good evening. They promised a full timetable from today. On Southern Rail are complaining the service has been anything but normal.
Yes, passengers took to social media to vent their frustration. One said, "Why is the 704 from Hawley to London Bridge cancelled?" Another complained that his train was cancelled yet again.
The train drivers' union, ASLEF, called off the strike as talks continue over guards. That comes as MPs today debated plans that could cut the number of strikes on the transport system.
Well, our transport correspondent Mike Pearce is at Three Bridges. Mike, what's the verdict from commuters tonight?
Very mixed, I have to say. The good news is that virtually every single train is tonight running, certainly on the indicator boards here, but about half are delayed, some by just a few minutes, some by a little bit more. So once again, despite the promises, it's been a very difficult day for many thousands of passengers.
The promise was a normal service, but there were still cancellations, about 5% this morning. The improvement is because the drivers' union ASLEF has called off its strikes to allow for peace talks, and guards are no longer closing train doors. The RMT union went ahead with its drivers' strike, but with only 12 members, it was never going to have an impact. The RMT say the company has broken a promise not to run trains without a second member of staff. This disabled passenger says it's leaving people stranded.
Often the staff are not aware that I'm on the train, and I've been left on the train with no one to assist me to get off, causing huge anxiety and distress, and this is a common occurrence.
Southern say they've had to run a few services without a second person because of the industrial action. Meanwhile, a passenger survey from the official watchdog today names Southern, not surprisingly, as the worst in the country.
The government needs to obviously be aware that passengers at the moment are feeling very frustrated, particularly commuters, and they need to work with operators and Network Rail to ensure that the punctual, reliable railway that we as passengers deserve is being delivered.
Meanwhile, MPs have been debating if High Court judges should in future approve transport strikes and limit any action to allow half of services to run.
We in Parliament should not stand by and allow strike action to cause people to lose their own jobs.
This bill is disproportionate, it's unnecessary, and it's an attack on a fundamental British liberty, the right to withdraw labour in a legal trade dispute with an employer.
So, Mike, how does Southern justify that trains were cancelled today?
Well, funnily enough, it says that it had enough drivers, but they were in the wrong place. Now, they say it was a human error. The people who plan the train service, the train planners, meant to match up the drivers and the trains, get everybody in the right place. There was a mismatch. They didn't do it properly. There were some mistakes that were made, and that's the reason they say that the trains were cancelled this morning. Tonight, they say things are looking better, and they're hoping to run a near normal service. As we heard there, about 95% of trains have been running today. So if 5% aren't running of the 2,200 trains, that's almost 100 cancellations, so I suppose it depends on how you look at it. But this was reaction here at Three Bridges a little earlier.
Brighton train from London Bridge, 12 minutes delay, 4 cars only, packed to the rafters, just awful.
Yeah, it was fine this morning. Yeah, no problems this morning. See what it's like going home now.
Very good. I arrived at work like 15 minutes earlier than usual.
No, it wasn't normal. There's delayed trains in the morning, there's delayed trains now, and I've come back early.
And the news on those talks, ASLEF at the TUC, they are continuing and will continue again tomorrow. So while there's talking, at least there's hope.
Thank you, Mike. And remember, you can see how your local rail operator performed in the satisfaction results at itv.com/Meridian.
Around 100 flights at Heathrow Airport were cancelled again today because of fog. There have also been delays at Southampton Airport, with passengers told to check with airlines before travelling. Ferry services to and from the Isle of Wight also suffered delays.
Family of an 83-year-old man who died. He was hit by a train on an unmanned level crossing on his mobility scooter are calling for safety improvements to prevent further deaths. Derek Thomas was hit by the train as he was crossing in Bentley near Alton last October. An inquest into his death heard the weather conditions may have made it difficult for Mr. Thomas to see or hear the train.
A £500 million project to link the national grids of the UK and France have been approved by Fareham Borough Council. More than 100 miles of undersea cables will be laid from Normandy to Hillhead Beach, and a power station will be built at the Daedalus airfield site at Lyon-Solent. The National Grid says the project will mean lower energy prices for customers. The Civil Aviation Authority today agreed to accept all safety recommendations made after the Shoreham airshow disaster.
The CAA's final report into the August 2015 crash is due out later this year, but today's interim report directs airshow organisers and the pilots that take part in them to take new stricter safety measures.
In our Brighton office, Andy Dickinson. Andy, what have we learned?
Well, in the background to this report, there is obviously the police investigation into the air crash, investigations by the Air Accident Investigations Branch and the inquest. But today's report by the Civil Aviation Authority directly refers to recommendations already made by the AAIB, specifically procedures on maintenance for ex-military jets like the Hawker Hunter at the centre of the Shoreham disaster, and the distances between air shows and the crowds that watch them. We asked George Bacon from the British Air Display Association what he thought.
Well, I think generally we're all in harmony on this one, simply because whilst this may be seen as perhaps work around the edges of the whole activity, it is all good stuff which will reinforce the safety parameters pertaining to the entire activity.
Now, the CAA is telling us that it is accepting all the safety recommendations made so far. 9 of the 21 up until this point had been rejected. However, the small print of the report itself is less clear, with many recommendations like the one specifying boundaries left open and relying on further reviews.
So will pilots now have to tell air shows about their routes and manoeuvres in advance?
Yes, it seems that now has been agreed, and that has also been one area that we believe the police have been looking into in their investigations into the crash. Did the Shoreham organisers know which stunts and how low the pilot, Andy Hill, would fly?
And just briefly, Andy, where are we with those investigations?
Andrew, 11 men died in that air crash in August 2015, and their families are still awaiting answers. I spoke to the police this morning, and all they would tell me was their investigations are still ongoing. The inquest is not now expected until late this year. A final report by the AAIB could be released in the spring. Those that run air shows like Farnborough and Bournemouth will also be waiting to hear what changes they will have to make.
Andy Dickinson, thank you very much.
A £12 million biogas plant is being planned for land next to the A27 in Hove. Despite local opposition, developers say residents wouldn't be able to see, hear or smell the food waste generator at Hangleton Bottom.
A £40 million hotel and apartment block has been granted permission on the site of a well-known former hotel near Bournemouth seafront. The Belvedere on the corner of St Peter's Road and Bath Road closed 2 years ago. The fire broke out at the derelict building last summer.
You're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up, the daredevil activity now classed as an official sport, but it's not for the faint-hearted.
For more on all of our stories, head to itv.com/Meridian. Any views or news, please give us a call and get in touch. Now, we often talk about the link between health and weight, and generally the focus is on avoiding overeating.
But for some older people, the risks of undernutrition are just as great, particularly if they live alone. Now, efforts are being made to combat this through lunch clubs.
Yes, lunch clubs are up and running right across the south in church halls and community centres where people can get a healthy, hearty meal and socialise at the same time. For more, here's Helen Ford.
They say there's no such thing as a free lunch. But this hot meal is far more than a plate of food. It's a way of helping older people to maintain their weight and with it their health, well-being and independence.
Thank you. Undernutrition often just isn't recognised by people as being a problem, but the problem is that if somebody is undernourished and they're losing weight, they're losing muscle mass, so they can become weaker, they're losing strength, so they might not be able to do some of the day-to-day activities or do them as easily as they would have been able to do.
Margaret Johnson is among a group of older people referred to this new weekly lunch club because they're at risk of undernutrition. Margaret lost weight when she spent 8 weeks in hospital. So far, what benefits are you finding from coming along?
Well, I get weight, so I know that I'm putting on a little bit, and you enjoy the company, and the meal's good.
The Lunch Club is a collaboration between the NHS and the local branch of the charity Age UK. Both recognise that older people can lose the incentive to cook when they live alone.
Having a social setting where we can have social activities, we can gear the group up to what the group wants to do. It also gives us an opportunity for us to give advice in a friendly way, and peer support is absolutely crucial as well.
No.
A regular weight check is a key element of the sessions. Details of every patient are recorded on paper and are also available to GPs via the internet.
It's absolutely imperative because it's important their GP is aware of the well-being of their particular people in their community. The GP then can immediately follow up either personally or by a community practitioner.
I didn't know if I could put on weight, because I lost such a lot. But now that I know I can put on 9 pounds in the last 3 months, so that's the right way to go.
How would you describe your eating? Normal, less normal, or more than normal?
Oh, I'm normal now.
You're normal.
It's early days for this scheme. The aim is that more patients like Margaret will be able to regain vital weight, helping them to live better for longer. Helen Ford, ITV News.
Thank you very much.
And if you want to find out where your local lunch club is, then head to our website itv.com/Meridian, where we have more information.
Now, every year, thousands of children need to go to a foster home because they can no longer live with their families. And that's why our local authorities are keen to encourage people to consider being a foster carer. It can be challenging, but very rewarding.
But what happens when children leave care for a life on their own 2 feet? Well, there are calls for much more support for young people who often find themselves in that situation when they reach 18.
Well, one such person is Zara. She's been talking to ITV News' Elaine Wilcox about how she's finding life hard since leaving her foster family.
You have this life one day and then the next day it all changes and you're like in a new world, new family, everything just changes around you.
At 15, Sarah went into foster care after a traumatic experience at home. As she approached 18, she wanted to stay with her foster family, but said the relationship broke down. A foster carer's funding is reduced when a child turns 18, and the vast majority of teenagers have no choice but to leave foster care.
That allowance would be like getting an allowance for a child, but it wouldn't be a wage as well, and it made me feel pretty low.
Despite being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, Sarah achieved 10A and A-star GCSEs and is studying A-levels. She'd never managed her own medication until now and finds living alone terrifying.
Because I'd come from somewhere where I kept being told that I wasn't allowed to stay at home on my own for longer than a certain amount of hours. I was in a psychiatric hospital where I was always being watched. And to put me in a flat where I'm all on my own really has damaged my mental health because it can be very difficult to manage.
She's spoken out to tell the care minister what the current system means for her.
I don't know anyone on my age that lives on their own unless they've been in care. So I think that the age that they call a child should really be increased in terms of like the care system, because like it's just like turfing someone out on the streets and saying just manage.
Zara's dream is to go to university, but admits there are days when she simply can't cope.
There's only so much I can do as an 18-year-old girl living on my own. Like, there's only so much I can take. It's very, very common along children in care and care leavers because you don't feel like there's anything to live for. And I don't want to end up at that point again.
She shared her experience in a powerful blog in the hope someone will listen. Elaine Wilcox, ITV News.
Yeah, good luck to Zara. Now, it's not for the faint-hearted and shouldn't be tried without training.
Now, parkour, or free running, whereby people run and jump through urban areas, has grown in popularity and is now classified as a sport. Clubs have popped up across the region, like this one at Basingwood near Basingstoke. There's also clubs in Wantage in Oxfordshire, Brighton and Horsham.
The man behind the drive to make it an official sport has high hopes for the future of this daredevil activity. He's been speaking to Kate Prout.
For 10 years, Brad Wenders has been banging the drum for parkour. It's preparing to take a great leap forward now that it's been recognised as an official sport.
It gives us credibility, people can start to understand what we do and understand that it's a legitimate activity and it's not just a bunch of oiks jumping around. It's the same as any sporting pursuit, it's the same as any healthy pursuit, the same as any other exercise they can get involved in. It also gives us the backing of things like Sport England. It just puts us on the same level pegging as every other sport. So we're as accepted as football, as rugby, golf, tennis, as any of them, and we've just got to jump through the same hoops as them, but at least we're on the same level as them.
Parkour, or free running, was developed in France in the 1980s. It involves running, climbing, swinging, vaulting, jumping and rolling. I don't know about you, but I watch free runners with my heart in my mouth, convinced they're going to hurt themselves. But of course, the first rule of parkour is how to land safely, how to jump safely, because the last thing this sport needs is injuries. Brad has 800 free runners on his books.
I guess the main thing I get out of it is it's a chance to be creative, and it's of trying to push your limits, like physically, but also when you train there's also a mental barrier. So every time you're training there's always that obstacle to get over, like mental and physical.
You develop something that they call parkourize, where you look at something rather than thinking, oh, that's a wall, you're like, oh, there's a jump there, or oh, I can do that, and it completely changes, like almost in like the Matrix, for example. It changes everything.
And it might change the image of parkour in many people's eyes too, and turn this into a sport making great strides in the world.
Wow, have you ever tried anything like that?
Definitely not.
No, good. You stay in one piece. Now, this year sees the anniversary of the last passenger steam train on the southern region. It was out of Waterloo and travelled to Weymouth.
Well, the mode of transport may have died out, but the public loves it, for it definitely has not. In fact, that last journey is being recreated in July and is expected to draw crowds of enthusiasts and much media interest. This is one of the last services from Waterloo to Exeter in 1965. It was full of fans as it made its final journey.
Yes, and remember last year when the Flying Scotsman passed through the region, thousands of people turned out to catch a glimpse of the locomotive thundering through the region after its multi-million-pound upgrade.
Well, and now another major project is underway to bring steam back to our preserved rail routes. It's costing £5 million, and Matt Price has been to meet the people working to make it happen.
Piece by piece, carefully does it. This is a painstaking process to bring back to life a famous locomotive. And while the P2 Mikado may not be a household name, this team of engineers are hoping to change that. Only 6 of these Mikados were ever built in the 1930s before being rebuilt and then scrapped in 1961. Their true potential never really reached.
They look very, very different to any other steam locomotive that ever operated in the UK. And the first one was full of all sorts of technical innovations. You know, just its sheer size for the UK was different. Having 8 driving wheels on a passenger locomotive with a tender is unique to this class. And it was an experimental locomotive in so many ways.
The 2007 Prince of Wales will cost £5 million to build and be paid for by donations. But this team are used to fundraising. In 2009, they completed the build of another mainline loco, the Tornado, with royal approval.
This gap here will be filled by the motion bracket.
Back at the workshop, it is a nationwide effort, with much of the country helping to manufacture parts for this locomotive.
We've then got, obviously, another 6 driving wheel halls.
Ian is just one of those helping on the build.
It's modern skills from the latest technology, going right back to basic blacksmithing work that was done in the 1700s, bending bits of metal. And it's a mixture of all that. And I get the opportunity to do all that, which is great, because there's no really anywhere else you'll do that.
40 years ago to the day, the mighty engine, designed by Sir Nigel Gresley.
The design was the work of Sir Nigel, perhaps better known for his Flying Scotsman seen here at King's Cross Station in London. That loco, part of the A1 class, set world records for steam traction.
Just walking alongside this locomotive gives you an idea of how big it is. Everything is on a massive scale. This is a washer for the engine, still extremely heavy, and adding to the train's overall weight of 160 tonnes.
Heavy, yes. Capable, most definitely. And over the next few months, the team will hold a series of fundraising roadshows with updates on the progress made. It's hoped by 2021 the P2 Mikado will be able to deliver its full potential. Matt Price, ITV News.
Now, yesterday we told you about the auction of a unique collection of autographs that was taking place today.
Yes, from the great train robbers to Charles Dickens to astronauts. The remarkable collection of 1,000 signatures belonged to a late stage magician called John Evans from Worthing.
Well, everything in the collection today sold for a total of £36,000, including the rare photograph signed by Neil Armstrong, which sold for more than £2,500.
Time for the weather now. Let's speak to Simon. Simon, what have you got for us today?
Well, we've obviously been talking about the fog for the last couple of days because that's been the main news story, but it's also been really, really cold. Last night, temperatures got down to minus 4.9 in Benton in Oxfordshire. And in parts of Sussex yesterday, they didn't get above 0.9 Celsius all through the day. So it's been exceptionally cold. So we've had some brilliant pictures of the icy weather coming in. Unsurprisingly, the birds have been out, on rather than in the lakes. Terry Buckman sent in this photo from Storrington in Sussex, where he also managed to get, oh, look at this, brilliant shot of a tussle between an airborne gull and a duck on the ice. Unfortunately, what you don't see is the gull pulling the duck along the ice as it tries to get the bread. That obviously would have happened in a different picture. But Steve Cottrell sent in this one. That's a moorhen looking like it's doing the full-on Torval and Dean thing in Thatcham. And have you ever seen an ice-skating fox? Here you go. Well, kind of luck, isn't it? Paul Stone spotted this one wandering along the edge of the frozen lake at a nature reserve. Isn't that amazing? But ever heard of a fog bow? That's one of those. Martin Dolan caught it on his camera this morning near Corfe Castle in Dorset. Formed in the same way as rainbows, apart from fog droplets of water are tiny. So instead of the light reflecting and refracting through to give us a proper rainbow, you get diffraction to give you a very dull and plain and wider fog bow. Isn't that amazing?
Brilliant picture. Never seen one. Thank you.
Well, there you go. You have now.
Learned something new.
A wealth of information. Now then, let's find out from Simon what the weather's going to be like over the next couple of days.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, once again, it was mixed fortunes across the region today. This was 9 o'clock in the morning in North Witney, where Ron was on something of a murky dog walk. Meanwhile, down on the south coast, lovely start to the day at Hill Head. And Simon was there to get this gorgeous picture of the sunrise. As for tomorrow morning, well, again, it's hit and miss as to what you'll get, but we certainly have more mist and fog developing overnight tonight. 2 Met Office weather warnings, one for the freezing fog, the other for the risk of ice on untreated surfaces. A lot of moisture in the air, and with the sub-zero temperatures it will turn quite slippery. So tricky visibility, very poor overnight tonight. Certainly a murky start tomorrow and a slow rush hour to look forward to. That journey to school or work, give yourself a bit of extra time, and it'll be cold as well. But fairly quickly things will improve. We're going to start to pick up a slightly stronger breeze, and that's going to lift that mist and fog into low cloud as we head through the morning. By the afternoon, yes, you might see an odd bright spell here and there. Generally, though, it's an overcast picture, and that means the temperature's a bit disappointing. Anywhere tomorrow between 3 and 6 degrees, so it will still feel fairly cool. As for your high tide times, you can see on the Isle of Wight around 9:30 in the morning, then just before 10 in the evening, and then Thursday, well, we start to pick up a southerly breeze, stronger wind coming up from the south, the cold near continent, bringing with it crisp and dry air. Now that means that we're going to see more in the way of sunshine, but it is going to feel very cold indeed. Temperatures will probably hit around 5 or 6 degrees, but with the wind chill, it's going to feel more like 1 or 2.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
In just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
But now, though, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you very much for your company. And remember to join Andrew, who has your late news just after 10:30. We'll see you tomorrow. Stay warm. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.